Johnson, and I'm director here at the Maier. And how's the sound quality? Good. Okay? All right, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce artist Rebecca Smith this morning. Rebecca arrived on Tuesday night with her husband, Michael Coffey, and we've just had a wonderful few days with them. Becca and our very own John Spanish, our preparator, have been installing for the past 3 days her exhibition. And it's just been a real honor to host both of you. And we've had wonderful conversations, so we're very grateful that you're with us. I'd like to take this opportunity also to publicly thank the sponsor of the exhibition and Rebecca's visit, and that's Mary Gray Shockey, class of 1969, trustee of the college. She has completely supported this whole enterprise, and so we're deeply grateful to her. She was not able to be here for any of it, unfortunately, but I do want to acknowledge her and her generosity. Randolph students, a reminder after the gallery talk, please join us for lunch in the Alcove conference room. Grab your lunch from Cheatham Dining Hall and just meet us in there to dine with Rebecca and Michael and the panelists who will be speaking to us this afternoon at 2 o'clock. It's a great opportunity to have some informal conversations with everyone, and you have to eat anyway, right? So join us, please, for that. Rebecca Smith was born in 1954 in Glens Falls, New York. She spent her early years in Washington, D.C., and was educated at Sarah Lawrence College and the New York Studio School. First exhibiting in 1977, she has made art in various media, including painting, performance, sculpture, and tape drawing installations. Her work has been collected by the Brooklyn Museum, the Microsoft Collection, the Maier Museum of Art in Australia, and the Albright Knox Collection, among others. Most recently, she co-curated and exhibited in images from the mixing layer at the Great Gallery, Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Art in 2013, and mounted a solo exhibition of sculptures and drawings entitled Atmosphere at Glacier Gallery in Philadelphia in 2014. She exhibited a large sculpture, Noctilucent Clouds, created in 2015, in the exhibition Here and Above, a dialogue between sculptures, at the Museum of Fine Arts in Richmond, Virginia, which then acquired the installation, and it's installed in the museum's atrium. So go to Richmond and look at it. It's beautiful and wonderful. So please join me in welcoming Rebecca Smith.
Hello, it's nice to see you all. I thought I'd start by explaining this title, which in atmospheric conditions, gathered and unsettled. And the gathered and unsettled part, I thought, was such a great phrase to describe where we are where the climate is now and where we are in thinking about it, which is, and the phrase actually comes from the log of Darwin's boat, SS Beagle, that explored the Galapagos Islands and a lot of other places, and where they made these amazing observations. And one of the kinds of observations they made was on weather, which people didn't think about that much at that period in terms of really observing it and in the sense of trying to anticipate it in an organized way with taking notes and making records. So I just thought gathered and unsettled kind of means you're gathering your resources, you're not, and you're thinking, but there's an unsettled feeling, it's unresolved, and things are happening, things are moving that you can't anticipate. And these two pieces are the most recent pieces in the show. This is a group of really recent works. And this is from 2010. This is kind of where I started with my career at that point, which was really based in abstraction and based in work dealing with the grid. Is this sound okay? Yeah? These are the first of these grid sculptures. Now you can see later ones in the exhibition. They're made out of steel, welded steel and bent, forged steel that's heated and then bent, and then welded together and then painted. This one's, the one at the bottom is called Finding Your Way Out of Doors, so that's sort of presages the future. These two are in the show, Layered Clouds and Ross Ice Shelf. Around 2005, 2006, I started to think about introducing into my abstract work subject matter, and it was hard for me to think about how to do that. I was not going to illustrate, so I started just by using titles, tagging them in a sense, to bring attention to climate change by tagging them with the names of glaciers and ice formations that were changing. That's Ross Ice Shelf. This is Biafo, and that's just Biafo, two views. That's Columbia, that's Dome. This is, maybe it's Norwegian and Martha can pronounce it. It's Solheim Jökull or something. It's a glacier, Barnes Ice Cap. This was, again, going back to more abstract work, but I started to use the idea of making a lot of drawings and then finding out the imagery that came out of them. So these are three forms, 3 or 4, actually I guess with these it's 4 and 5, hanging on kind of arms that stick out, so you see it in layers. So it's really flattened in a photograph, but it's actually a lot more sculptural. So that tells you something too, that sculpture is very different from two-dimensional work, and you really need that opportunity to move around it. It's really a hallmark of sculpture, and that's why it's always better to be there and experience it than just to look at flat images. This is the work in the show. The round part, they're really almost like pictograms for me. This is the Earth with its atmosphere, although this is thicker than the actual atmosphere. Because at this point I started to think, what's the most important thing to convey about climate change? And it's really, if you understand what the atmosphere is, you have to get it, because it's so crucial, because without the atmosphere we would just all, that no matter could exist, nothing would work, and human life couldn't exist, and it's just, amazing to think about, and it's this miracle of a protective sleeve around the planet, and we are damaging it. If we damage it too much, there just has to be a limit to the damage you can do. This blue is a crystalline structure, so that was symbolizing nature to me. And this is a sort of a house structure which symbolized human beings. Now this is an image. I want to kind of explain how my thinking process of starting with something real. These are nonrepresentational clouds, which the sculpture at Virginia Museum is about, and these are believed to be produced by climate change as we have more increased levels of methane in the atmosphere because of all these human processes, including agriculture. The methane goes to the top of the lower atmosphere and becomes water vapor that then pops up into the mesosphere, encases meteoric dust, and becomes little crystals which create clouds, and they have particular formations. So that's the science part. I hope it's accurate. And it's just, so what you see, there are no other clouds that glow at night. And you only see these in northern latitudes in the summer. So you can see them in, I mean, they're sighted in Ireland, Canada, and even they've been sighted in London. There are photographs of them in the city of London in the sky. I've never seen them except online. And it just, you know, you look at this and it's amorphous. How would you begin to convey that? How could you make something that could even suggest it? So that's kind of the thing I like to fool around with. And I think that's so much in life we're presented with, how can you convey an idea? So I think that kind of the connection between science and art is ideas and observation, and then communicating it. So there's that. This is over the city of Edmonton in Canada. So those are noctilucent clouds. And this is that same place, and I think I don't know where this actually is, this real location, but these then show the structures that are common in these clouds, and certain patterns happen over and over again. Holes, these dark holes in this kind of web, whorls, bands back like that, more whorls, thin veil of a sheet, and that's another hole, and whorls. So I started to kind of really study these, and that's where I got the structure for the sculpture. That's one of the drawings for the sculpture. And this one is in the exhibition. This is a working drawing for the sculpture. And that's me working on it. This is them installing it, which was really fun because it's 25 feet off the floor, and they went up in this thing. And one of these guys was really scared, which I would be, so I really had a lot of sympathy for him. But they, according to a whole map I had, they could find it was like, I don't know, 25 separate pieces, and they put it all together. That's kind of a close-up. And this surface, it's steel coming off of the wall, and some of it is right next to the wall, and it's painted with iridescent paint, so it has a glow, a blue glow. And because of the location, the sun travels across it, so the color and the reflectivity is changing. So there it is. So back to other work. This is this was more the abstract work I was making. This is a recent one. This is stainless steel. But it's, and these are all sort of like animals. I began to work on an idea that became a very big piece. This is where it starts with copper, very thin copper sheeting you can bend, and I color code it with tape so that it can be built to give me a roadmap to build it bigger. This is a steel model of the same thing. And this is the large one. This is about, let's see, it's about, it's 8.5 feet tall and about 5 to 6 feet in diameter. It's called Big Reuse, and it has to do with a vision of the post-climactic apocalypse science fiction sort of fantasy I have, that I've kind of gotten through reading a lot of things about what would happen after a big climate apocalypse. and what could be left. And I thought of a future where we don't keep using everything up and we reuse. There's actually a business in New York City called Big Reuse, where they gather stuff and all used stuff, and people go and buy it and really cheaply and build stuff. It's another view. And this brings me into another aspect of the work that I do. As much as the sculpture is, a sculpture is hard to build because it's unless you use ephemeral materials, you really have to be able to work with obdurate materials that require somewhat, skills and time and some investment of materials and labor and money and all that stuff. So you have to plan with it. It's not spontaneous. It can be at certain moments, but basically it's a planning thing. So you like to do your spontaneous exploratory part with drawing. And for me, drawing is throughout everything. Drawing is a great observation tool. It's better than taking photographs in a lot of cases because you can put more into one drawing than you can capture in a photograph. This is what another aspect of my work, and I have it in the gallery, is the tape drawing, which is quite spontaneous and takes, that took me like 2 days to do that. Which, isn't that much time, but it's based on many, many hours of drawing, sketchbooks, drawing on paper, and collages and things like that. So you have that as part of your practice, that you draw a lot. I think every artist should draw a lot. There are always exceptions, but basically that's thinking, that's your freest thinking. This is a tape drawing I did probably 10 years ago at the Bloomberg headquarters of Bloomberg's business. It was called Warm, Dark, and Rainy. Because I was thinking, what's the future going to be like after climate change really gets going? And in rainy, wet places, there's going to be a lot of rain. But warm, and when it's raining, it's dark. So this is all done in shorthand because I thought of it as it needs to be. It was using. I think shorthand is so beautiful, and it's a script that is sort of obscure. So I wanted to hide a message there, because I didn't want to blare out a message. And what it is, it's a quote. There are two quotes, one by William Tyndall, who was the first person to think of global warming and to postulate it. He was Irish, an Irish scientist in like the mid-19th century. And then the other one was a recent quote about by a scientist, current physicist now, and something about having crocodiles at both of the poles. And this is the aluminum foil tape I like so much. You'll see it in the other room. This was in Australia. And this is 2005. This is probably the first time I really put climate change issues into a piece. This was the water catchment basin, the map for the water catchment basin of that area, which, and I didn't even know it at the time, but it was crucial that the indigenous people always gravitated to like a catchment area because water is scarce there. This is a map of Australia, New Guinea, it's hard to see in this, and Tasmania, in the landmass it was during the last ice age. So the whole outline, that's the ice age. Then it got a little sort of in between stage as things started to melt, and then here's Australia as it is now. So that was conveying, if anyone thought about what happens to a landmass, that it actually can change. And that's what people are finding out along the eastern seaboard right now. What happens when this really changes? And it's done so in history. So at that point in 2005, I was thinking a lot more about, people are not realizing what's going on. But I think most people realize it now. Now it's more like what to do. So fortunately, there's a panel discussion later, and we'll find out. This is a big, very old-fashioned kind of drawing that shows my notes and really a kind of visual thinking, which I think is really key to what I always have believed about art, that I don't want a lot of narrative, I want visual thinking. Because other people are better at the narrative thing. And visual thinking is so very important and so powerful, because I think it hits us in places that we don't even realize. So this shows the layers of the atmosphere. You saw the sculpture with the round. That one was also called atmosphere. So these two things are talking about exactly the same thing, looks totally different. For a big issue, there are many ways into it. These are based on the layers of the atmosphere sort of diagram that we're probably all familiar with. And this is pencil, watercolor, color paint pencil, and it shows, for instance, like around here is where the jet stream is when you go on an airplane, and it stops being bumpy and it's just smooth. This is Northern Lights, I think it is. The Northern Lights are up here too. Then satellites are someplace around here. So when you think about it, you really visualize it, you become much more, it starts to become like your neighborhood or something, you're familiar with it. It's a close-up. And I had a lot of great quotes. I can't read that, but someone says, for all practical purposes, our atmosphere is 50 miles thick. That's generous. If we got out into the atmosphere at 50 miles, we just burn up. So it's not like you can breathe there or anything. But it's really, I'd say, I think it's about 12 miles up to where you're over the mixing layer, where all the greenhouse gases, kind of everything's mixing, and there's a lot of weather and stuff, till you get to more different layers, and it heats up for a while, it cools down for a while, and then it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And somewhere around here is the layer where there were the holes in the atmosphere because of the CFC gases, and that is a problem that has been really remedied to a great degree. So, we can do it. This is another tape drawing. This was a show emissions images from the mixing layer, where these are, a friend and I helped a scientist and an engineer take measurements of methane emissions in Manhattan, which was really fun for us, really interesting, and we made a show out of it, and all the artists worked with ideas from it, and mine was a tape drawing. This is a scale drawing of the Earth, layers of the atmosphere, and how the greenhouse gases just travel up and out, causing chemical processes that heat. And this is, here's a methane molecule, here's another methane molecule, and I'm really obsessed with methane because it's so powerful and there's so much of it. This is the difference, this is in terms of visual thinking, this is a carbon dioxide molecule, and these are all, this is how many, well, wait a minute, this is a methane, and how many carbon dioxides it would take to equal it. So you can see how much damage that particular greenhouse gas can do. Close up. This is the floor, that's the ceiling. Another close up. Okay, so there's our molecule. I was trying to make it look really mean. Look familiar? That's my favorite, methane again. This is the big carbon and the little helium. Is it helium?
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen, right. And this is there's one like this in the other room too, actually. This is a real natural gas pipe with a valve. And in terms of sculpture, I was playing with some ideas of making images for and the chemical notation is really about showing what things do, not what they look like. This is not what helium looks like. But we have to have an idea of what it looks like or means, because otherwise we can't think about it. It helps us think about it to have an image. So it's always portrayed as a bunch of balls, as if it's three-dimensional, but then I flattened it out with this material and I hung it on this pipe, so it kind of, you get a sense you can pick it up and move it, which you can. And with that idea, I wanted to communicate a sense of potential, that things aren't fixed, that you could do something, that action can happen. And also with the valve, which makes you want to reach out and adjust it or something, it suggests potential and the possibility of action. This is carbon dioxide. This is all three of them layered, and these are in the show, which got back to those other layered pieces on a different kind of support, but still layered. Whoops. Well, let's see. Okay, thanks. So I'll just, because I'd like to talk about these two a little bit. These are the most recent ones.
Danny's gonna fix it. This is a slide.
Yeah. Thanks. Whoops. Okay, great. Thanks. So these two are called Globe 1 and Globe 2, and I moved into an area where I wasn't so trying to be as deliberate about content. I had the idea of globes for a long time, particularly because I have seen recently the Unisphere in Queens, outside of the Queens Museum, which had been at the World's Fair in the early part of the 20th century. And it's just a fantastic thing. It's, I'd say it's maybe like 40 feet high. And it's a real, it's basically structured like that. And there's a linear latitudes and longitudes, on top of which you can see right through. It's like a cage, and it's huge. And then on top of it is all the continents, and they're solid. And you can, so that you see the front, and then you can see the back of the one behind. So it's as if you can see through the planet. It's a really fantastic looking thing, and you can walk around it. So I thought of I wanting to make a globe like that, but more sort of about intuitive and maybe more, just as if it's not a particular planet, but just an intuitive thinking about a planet. And so I started by building, let's see if no, it's not in this picture. Collecting a lot of old little boxes, and I glue gun them together into a spherical shape. And one of the things I really find is interesting about art is to make something that, and be attentive to the mistakes or surprises or opportunities that come along the way in the process of working with materials. You'll never get this working on a computer in the same way. I mean, you'll get something. You'll get a very limited range of surprises. But you will never get the range of surprises that you do when you work with real materials in real life. So I made this sphere of boxes. Then with help, I outlined the shapes of the boxes, so you can see the different shapes, and that's how I got my longitudes and latitudes. And this is bronze rod, and then I made these parts out of pieces of paper and cut them and taped them and adjusted them, and then someone else formed them for me of copper plate, really thin copper sheets, not copper plate, but copper sheets. And then we bended them and welded them, and then put a patina on them. And my idea was this would be like the Statue of Liberty color. And then this is a strange red that comes naturally if you put a lot of heat on it, but then we also added a little more color to make it even somewhat redder. So without thinking about what these continents would look like, these shapes came out of it, and it's just very interesting to me that it looks like a globe, as much like a globe as it does, because I think that's what it really suggests. And this is more of an oval egg shape, because I once read that the Earth is not a perfect sphere, which I thought was really kind of great, and that it's more oval, so I accentuated that hugely. Then this is sort of a polar cap flying off. And I just played with some ideas of my feelings about what's happening to our planet with these forms. Then came the part about a base, which is sculptures. When you're working on this stage, the base is always a big question, because you could just put it on something, but the base, you don't want to be haphazard about what you put it on. That's one of the things that I learned as an artist. It's a very good thing to get feedback from people, because you miss things. And I got feedback for a long time telling me I was missing how I was attaching my wall sculptures to the wall, that it wasn't looking, the screws looked bad or something was bad. And I kind of resisted it for a long time, and then I just thought, you know what, I bet they could be right, what everybody's saying. So, and you really, one of the things you do as an artist, is that you overlook things and you're blind to it. So it's very good to get feedback. Not that other people, you don't want to listen to people too much, but it's because, you may be right, and it might be right for you. So it's a balance, and the base is one of them where you could just not think about it. This is a sculpture working tape base where it goes up and down, it goes around, it's on wheels. It's a great thing, but it just looks unthought about if you exhibited it this way. as much as I like the way this looks, and it also brings a lot there that is, I'm sort of blind to, but it would inform how people looked at this in a way that's not connected. So I needed to find a base. So I had noticed, I've been watching this company that has invented this completely green material made from what's under the earth when mushrooms grow. It's all this fiber that's generated as a big mass that you don't see, and then the little mushroom pops out. But before it pops out, there's all this tough fiber. Well, they grow that fiber and make packing materials, building materials, and even furniture out of it. And that's what this is. This is mycelium. The company is called Ecovative. And this part is a little end table that they sell. But it's basically white when they sell it. This, they were fooling around with color, and they offered it to me. And they glued two of them together for me. So that's what I used for the base. This, for people who know about sculpture, this is like Brancusi. This form appears in his work a lot. I don't think the people at Ecovative know that until I told them, but it's a classic thing. So it has a relationship to art. And it's also, in terms of content, it has a relationship to the kind of issues. So in terms of form and in terms of art history and in terms of the form, I think it really works. So it was, with art, you can make connections on many levels. And this is the one that started with the colored tape things, and this is the white base. So I think I've told you a lot about the show, and I'm wondering if anyone has questions.
You said at one point, I don't want a lot of narrative. You're the artist. I'm the one that looks at your art. I'm thankful for all the narrative you gave me. Because when I looked at this stuff last night, I thought, okay, now, somebody is sending me a message that's related to the atmosphere. But how was I supposed to know all the great stuff you just told us about the basin?
Right.
So I'm asking you, like the stuff you put in Cooper Union in New York, how much narrative have you left behind, or when they walk by it, I assume it's a place where they see it coming through. What do you think they see, and what do you hope they'll see?
Well, I think a part of what it's hard for me to know what they would see, because that's so individual. But it's really, really difficult question you put out there. But I think it's essential, and I think with something visual, art is not going to do what politics is going to do, or science is going to do, or policy is going to do, or research is going to do, because those things, it's a different place. But I think with art, it tries to give you a feeling that's touching emotion that moves you. And that's what I think is the deepest thing. So by showing how thin the atmosphere is, for instance, I was surprised when I found out how really thin the important part of the atmosphere is, the part that actually protects us, that we can't do without. That is made me feel small and frail, because our protection is fragile, and we're, you know, so to get back to what you asked, I mean, I would hope that would, in a visceral, like, feeling way, touch you. And that's what you would get. I would hope that the molecules, with the way the painting is on them, would give you the sense of what a gas is like, because it really looks, that watercolor kind of gassy look. Does that answer anything?
When you, yeah, it answers some and asks, and brings more questions.
Okay.
When you say that art is site-specific, what does that mean?
Well, the tape drawing is site-specific, because I did it on the site, which is the wall in the gallery at the Maier Museum. So it's not anywhere else, and it's never going to go anywhere else, because it's a temporary site-specific installation. So I've done quite a few of these in different places, and it really makes a difference, the atmosphere of the place for me and how the people are. I've done it in places where I feel like I'm kind of having a struggle because there are problems in the situation. But then when it's a very nurturing place like here, I feel very joyful, and I think that came across to me. I would wonder if it came across to people with a kind of smooth glow sort of situation.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the good question. Does anybody else have a question?
What do you
Oh,
visualize?
I'm sorry. Pardon?
Do you visualize what you're going to do, or does it evolve gradually?
Oh, yeah, that particular drawing, I've done many drawings for, and I know there's a great Matisse quote about drawing, you know, those little small drawings that he did that were maybe like 25 lines, and they were just like amazing masterpieces. They were not, I'm not saying, it takes a lot of background of drawing to get to that point of drawing.
The drawing is two-dimensional. Sculpture is inherently three-dimensional.
Well, I'm just talking about the tape drawing.
Oh,
So, yeah, but all the works I've done drawings for. And a lot of planning drawings too.
I can see a drawing could help you, because,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It provides a basis, I suppose.
Pardon?
It provides a basis from then proceeding.
Yes,
from that.
it's a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking. That's why there's a lot of drawing in the big drawing that's really my notes for understanding, learning about the atmosphere. There's a lot of drawing because it's better than words sometimes.
Yeah, but that's not three-dimensional.
No. Yeah, so there's a jump between the drawing and the actual sculpture.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I was interested in drawing, and then I got into sculpture, and the two are fundamentally different.
Yes, yeah, but there's a relation. Do you find a relationship?
Oh, yeah, no, from there.
Right. Yeah, they're very different. So I think you had a question?
Yeah, what got you started on this path? I love when I see artists, no matter what, whether it's a performing artist or a visual artist, that has something that inspires them, that moves them, that motivates them. How did you get on this path?
Well, actually, in my family, my father was an artist. And so, but I think all children are artists. So, the fact that he was an artist, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday, the fact that he was an artist and I was around him as a child really made me feel like he was like us, the other children. He didn't stop. The other grown-ups stopped. But, so it was very much a model to me, and I really, but yeah, you know, I was sort of, I always wanted to do something expressive like that, and I thought for a long time, I thought of being a writer because I love to read, and it was less intimidating to think I would go off in my own direction, but really I was not very talented in that, so I just felt like, well, I got to do what is the thing that is really my talent. So that's how it got started.
So I was talking more specifically
Okay.
about dealing with the environment.
Oh, where the environment came in. Well, that was when I went to Australia in 2005, and I was so struck by how bright the sun was. And I was aware of all these holes in the ozone layer. And people told me they were getting, their doctors were saying, you better get checked for skin cancer twice a year. Because there was so much radiation coming in because of where they are underneath these holes, because they're close to the, in the southern hemisphere, that it just somehow, all these things I had been hearing and kind of keeping at a distance, I let them in, and I thought, okay, well, and then that became, and I had small children at the time, and I just felt, well, somehow I've got to do something, and somehow let this in, and have this in my work somehow. And then, as someone who really cares about the formal aspects of art and abstraction, I didn't want to lose anything. I wanted to use everything. So and I think that's just the ongoing challenge of how to use these things and keep experimenting and trying different methods of doing it. Oh, yeah?
Well, I was very struck by the role of shadows playing. And I wonder if you can't walk around the mounted pieces, but do you think that the shadows help the viewer to, in a sense, walk around?
That's a great way of putting it. I like that a lot. Yeah, I think the shadows do help because it informs you of the space, that you're in a space and that the light is acting on it. I like the shadows, and I didn't think about, I'm going to get shadows when I started to do this, but when I saw it, that's one of those opportunities. We like to be careful with it to not have to be too dramatic, too much contrast, but to kind of enjoy the shadows that happen. It's always different. I think somebody back there had a question. Yeah.
You alluded to the fact that you don't do all of the fabrication, the welding, and so I'm curious how you make those decisions, and also if that interjects any quality of collaboration in what you're doing.
An inequality of collaboration, or what? A quality of collaboration.
If having somebody else do some level of fabrication, you're getting some kind of feedback that makes it more collaborative than the pieces you're just doing completely on your own.
Well, I guess there's definitely always the element of another person. I have done collaborations. I've done quite a few collaborations with other artists, and that's a different process. That's its own, because then that's really 2 people or 3 people or whatever. But working with the fabricator I work with, he really, he's an artist himself. Richard Weber, he's really extremely talented and knowledgeable. And he doesn't really step into it. And I don't think we ever really talk about what you like. But I feel, he knows the difference between his work and my work, so we do it that way. And I think, I've worked with him for a long time, and I've worked with a few different people, and for me it's got to be that kind of a relationship where I feel also very comfortable with the person, and I know it's coming from me. But having said that, he's got the experience with patinas. He's gonna, do things that I don't have the strength to do, and also welding, I know, is really dependent on using it all the time. And I don't, do this all the time. So it's really, I think, often with things you end up having collaborations with people that are more or less on a spectrum of just you or with someone else. Yeah?
How did you arrive at the blue color that was in most of the pieces?
Oh, that's a great question.
What was the favorite color?
Yeah, you know, it's someone that this duo of Russian artists, and I can't remember the names right now. I haven't heard from them for a long time. I haven't seen their work around, but they did a survey. It was like their question was, what's the most popular color? And it's blue. So, which kind of makes sense because the sky is blue, so we see it all the time. And so we have this sort of identification with it. Maybe that's why it's so popular. And what I thought was, in the color of blue, because you accept it, because it's so popular and everyone loves it, you start to stop seeing blue as opposed to red, and you can have, you see many, many, many blues within it. You're very sensitive because you identify with this color and find all the different blues. And that's what in color really I'm the most interested in, is the nuances of color, where one blue feels like candy wrapper, it's kind of a brassy, vulgar color, and another blue is so delicate and soft. Those are the kind of color feelings I like to get, those really nuanced ones. And then sometimes it's kind of blah, or the sky, or robin's egg. You can't, I went through a lot of different blues in the course of doing this group of work. Yes?
I'm interested in your collaboration, I don't know if you would call it a collaboration, but your work with the scientists that you said you had worked with. Was it in Manhattan you were looking at the atmosphere?
Yes, it was. I don't know if you all are familiar with the studies that people have done in various cities about methane emissions from the pipelines in cities, because natural gas is basically methane, and there are so many leaks in the pipelines that the claims for natural gas being cleaner than burning oil or coal are really seriously undermined by the fact that there's so many gas leaks that when you count the gas leaks, when you burn natural gas, it's half as bad as burning oil. But if you factor in the gas leaks, which of course they don't do, the governments and not the manufacturers, but the gas companies, they don't factor in the fact that they're leaking gas all along the pipelines and in the cities and the distribution centers. So it's worse than burning oil. It's worse than burning coal because methane is so potent when raw methane leaks out. It's 100 times as much over a 20-year period. This is rough estimate. Than carbon dioxide, leaking carbon dioxide. So, and fracking does it, unleashes a whole load of it, but people aren't paying enough attention to that. So that's what this study was. Nobody had studied methane emission leaks in Manhattan. So, and it was so easy because of the technology now. You can just run around and do it. But nobody finances people to do it. And this was financed by an environmental organization. And my friend Ruth Hartner, who's also a sculptor, the two of us just assisted these people and, got coffee and, things like that. And we drove around in the car for a couple of days. We went up on buildings to measure the levels on like a 20-story building, which is different. And the scientists showed us just how you can see the top of the mixing layer with that flat level of clouds. And you can see the sort of, smoggy city place. You can see the cloudy gray air up until that level. So participating in that was really, really exciting for us, and because we were activists and we were artists, and then we made this art show out of it at the Cooper Union, which was a really fantastic opportunity that we could do an exhibition there in their gallery, and then also have this panel discussion in the Great Hall, which is like really amazing. And we got a grant from the Rauschenberg Foundation to do that, because they have a yearly program of art and climate change that they've been doing for maybe 5 years at least, gotta be more. Maybe every 2 years, I don't know. But now it's a big thing. Yes?
So you said earlier in response to someone's question that you think every child is an artist. I've always thought every child is a scientist. So the intersection of art and science, I think, is what makes it so engaging. And knowing the backstory behind why you chose the pedestal that you chose for these works just elevates it to a new level of appreciation. Yeah, I see other person literally supports the earth and you display it in this way. So I saw in your bio that your next project, you're looking for an architect for infra. I'd love to hear a little bit more about where you are in that process and what aspects of the science are you hoping to engage and work with?
Well, the curators of this show, one is an artist and one is a cell scientist who goes to the Arctic and dives under the ice and looks at these foraminifera, which are the amoeba little creatures, very, very old, and there are forms all over the planet, and it adapts to very extreme conditions. Like, that's one example. It also, there's a place they went to, San Francisco Bay, and got a boat and claimed they were doing science there, but you know, then because there's an area there where it's like this pit, it's like this basin, and there's almost no oxygen. And they have adapted, these foraminifera have adapted to that environment. And I just felt like they asked a lot of artists. They gave us like 2 years to make art of using that idea of adapting to extreme certain conditions. So my idea was, well, we're adapting to extreme conditions now because of climate change. So so far I've been thinking about how to do it. I'm starting with drawing. That's the, go-to place for me. So, and the thing, I'm at the point where I haven't really, the one thing I can really think of is sort of drawing and doing animated drawing, like an animation, and I was talking to someone here about that. So, I don't know how to do animation, so it might be a big learning curve for me, unless I have another idea.
Thank you very much.
Is going to moderate a panel, Communities and Climate Change. We will not be using that microphone, so don't worry, that's coming out, I don't know if I can tell. But we will have fresh microphones, so you can hear everything at 2 o'clock for that.